So something is perceived, and perception occurs possibly without categorization, but information is stored as you're perceiving, and eventually the mind looks for patterns in the information, and eventually a light bulb goes on, and the mind figures out what that thing is you're looking at, or what that information that you're perceiving means, and that invokes a categorization program that you have. And so you're walking, you look around, you see this ultimate natural beauty, and you see the colors, the light, and you take it in for 1/10 of a second, 1/2 a second, however long it is, and then boom, tree, boom, grass, boom, birds. And that pattern matching is matched with your memory, and along with each of those labels comes the definition. A bird, flies, has feathers, and then whatever your story is about birds. When I was a boy, whatever, I went hunting, or I had a parakeet in my room. And with that story comes feeling. Whether you felt good about that parakeet, or whether you felt bad about that bird you shot when you went out hunting for the first time and you wanted your uncle's approval, and yet your heart hurt, possibly. And so ultimately, possibly what humans have different from other animals is this ability to gather information and pattern match it with information that gives it a title. And even if it doesn't have a title for it, it'll say, oh, this is like something. Good example of that is chicken. Everyone always says any new meat they taste tastes like chicken. I'm a vegetarian myself, but you hear that over and over again, so it sticks in my mind. And so you match that information with the thing closest to it, and then you can continue to observe it over time, and then you might subclassify it or pull it out of that classification if you realize it's a completely different category. And so your life is this observation, categorization, recategorizing, attaching information to titles, and feeling feelings that are associated with that. Oh, I went walking once at night and I was robbed. Or I went dancing and I met this beautiful girl, dancing good. Walking at night, bad. I burned my hand on the stove. And so this information, these feelings are what keeps you, what nature, I suspect, intended to keep you alive. And the perception, and I don't completely have this figured out, but I'm just noticing, the perception seems to be an earlier, less evolved part of the brain where you're just scanning the horizon and you're not accessing a database to find a tree. You have some kind of impression. Oh, lion, bad, run away from lion. Without a lot of feeling, just it's bad, and it's in shorter term memory. If you're a bird, the 2 or 3 things that are going to come to kill you. You might even be in some kind of genetic memory you have that's faster than the human kind of memory, where you attach feelings, and so there's more data you're trying to pull up. And so perception seems to be what being in the present moment is. It's being alive perceptively and allowing the mind and giving some space to that, and not having to become the information, but maybe just noticing that the mind is accessing titles and feelings rather than being that title and that feeling. You're further away from the information. You're maybe detached. It's a little bit of a detachment. And there's an underlying overall feeling that I have when I'm in perception and merely not having recalled titles and information and attached feelings to those recalled information, and using that to solve problems for the future. There's a feeling I have which is different when I'm not running a program, when I'm not going to my memory and gathering that information in order to solve the problem, but I'm maintaining, I know the possibilities there, it sails by. Oh, I can pull up a program about birds, but I don't. I just let it sail by. And there's a feeling in being in that, which I call the present moment. I'm in a feeling right now as I speak. And it feels like continued perception. Like I'm continuing to perceive. I'm not latching onto an idea and going deep. I'm just skimming on the surface and taking in the information all around me. Perceiving the trees, I'm hearing the birds, I'm feeling the blood move in my body. I know when I'm breathing in and out. I'm present to the physical world, to both myself and the energy and the beings around me. And I have an overall feeling of well-being. And so when I'm in this, what I call present moment, I have an overall feeling of warmth, kind of a fuzziness. But if I pick a program and go deep on a subject based on what my pattern recognition pulled up, bird, tree, and I go, oh, I fell out of a tree when I was a kid. I go into that memory of tree, in tree, fall out of tree, cut my chest, needed stitches, fell to the ground, in a lot of pain. Or I can go to another memory about a tree, a forest I walked in another time. So, but I'm not present. I am slightly, like I know there's world around me, but I'm in the program about the tree when I was a boy. And I'm living whatever that memory was. That's what my emotions are. I don't have that general fuzzy feeling. I have whatever feeling that memory pulled up. And those birds lovely. And even if I pull up a positive memory, this is interesting for me. And I don't know if I'm really voiced this or written this or thought this before. But even if I look back on a positive memory, like I used to ski quite often, and I skied the moguls, and once in a while I would have a mogul run. Those are like snow mount, little tiny snow mounds. You're skiing through a field of snow mounds, and you're bouncing up and down off the top of these moguls. And I was a very good mogul skier. I'm still pretty decent. It'll probably only take me a few trips to get back to where I was. I'm probably kidding myself, but it'd probably take me longer if I could, because I was in my teens at that time. If I think about maybe one of my best mogul runs that I ever had, those positive memories it's good, it's positive, it's good, but it's kind of a dim, it's sort of like it has a veil. There's a veil over the joy. It's a remembered joy. Fades. Maybe the moment it happens is quite high, and then over time it fades. But and I went there. I don't know if you can sense it. I was going there to try to talk about that in a meaningful way. But now I'm back. I'm here now. I'm in this park. I'm walking, and the colors are brighter than that memory, which is hard. And they're more vivid, there's more contrast in the colors. The sound's more clear. And that fuzziness is coming back to my abdomen. And so if I'm really present with a tree or a plant, like I'm in the park now, I'm looking at this amazing, I don't know if it's a tree or what, but it's gorgeous. A bush or who knows, who cares? It's just really an exquisite sample of what time is created on this amazing planet. And there's flowers around me, and it's a very visceral experience to be present without playing a memory, without playing a categorization, without playing a title, without naming that flower. I'm just being with it. The colors, the contrast, the humidity that's on my skin, the blood flowing through my body, the red padded track under my feet. There's a visceral aliveness to it, and that seems to be what the warmth comes from. And when I go into my mind, when I gather data for a while and then I have a pattern recognition, like maybe there's a problem in my life, and I can feel the warmth going away. I'm being very analytical right now. I gather data and then I pull up memories of situations. Maybe it was a situation of a transaction I was in, and now I'm about to enter a new transaction, whether it's a conversation or a work relationship or whatever. And I'm in a conversation with someone, and we're talking about something that they want, and whether it's good for the company or something I want, and whether their goals align. And when I go back and I gather information from the past, when I've made these kinds of decisions and seen how they turned out, now I don't consciously pick a specific person and conversation. It's more of a muddled mass of intelligence that I'm just sort of taking in and getting a gut feeling about what to do. That occupies my mind in a way that withdraws my attention from the present moment. And it's dimmer, it's not as bright. Now, I also have the experience of being able to be in conversations and be able to watch how I'm thinking about a person or event. And that's different. That's more an evolved way of being. That's sort of remaining partially in the present moment, which is kind of what I'm doing in my talk right now. Like, I'm analytically thinking and going back and forth from my mind to this beautiful park around me. And I'm not never completely immersed in my mind. I'm keeping a toe, if you will, in the present moment. And so if my mind decides to do something stupid, get angry at someone or insult someone that has no constructive purpose, be immature in some way, be selfish, I can be present to that as an observer. And so I'm not saying there's a switch you turn on and off, present moment, mind, fully consumed mind. But there is a continuum, if you will, from all mind to all present, and I am able to do both. Although frankly, it's very hard now to be just mind. It's so painful. It usually doesn't last for more than a few hours or at the most, and it's really been probably a year or two since then. And that was a short period of time where I was going through some difficult transactions that were going bad, and everyone was angry at everyone. And but it's quite unusual for me. I go years without going full mind, and it's just not a productive place to be. But so the point is, if you can come out of your mind and get into your experience long enough to really be with a flower, be with a tree, walk in a park, and you can do that often enough, every day you should be on a nice walk in a park or a run. I like to run. I get in the present moment when I'm running. And you develop that over time, and you get to the point where you're able to have that warm feeling in your stomach, like you're an observational being, which might be an earlier version of a pre-mind version of humanity. Those are just words coming to me. I don't know what. I assume you believe in evolution if you're listening to that and believe it. But so and so maybe it's that's what it is. It's an earlier version of what it felt like to be a human when you were more present. And in a way, it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. I mean, historically, you had to remain present, right? You had to be fully immersed in your environment if you were a monkey, maybe, and assuming you believe in that, I suppose that's controversial, but because you had real predators. We don't really have predators anymore as humans. The only predators are other humans that are going to. But the fact is, we can spend more time in our mind because any given moment there's less chance of being attacked by a tiger, and so you can get into these long conversational unawareness of just mind gathering information and processing it, and almost completely not even noticing your environment. And a good example of that, if you've probably gotten in your car before and suddenly you're at work and it's a 30-minute drive and you don't remember anything other than walking to your car, and there you wake up and you're at work and you're getting out of your car. You wake up for a few minutes before you get to your desk and fall back to sleep. And maybe when you were in your car, you were thinking about who knows what, the bills, where you want to go on vacation, whether you have enough money to go on vacation, something your spouse said to you yesterday. How are you going to fix your teenager if they seem out of their mind? Whatever it is. How are you going to fix their parents? They're controlling freaks. And so we've all had that experience where we just go completely unconscious for a while and run a program or two. And when stress is in our lives, we go from program to program often without even noticing that we're in a park or that we're that there's a beautiful person sitting next to us that we were fully conscious to when we met, conscious of when we met them. And so anyway, that's kind of the spectrum for me of, and I would say for me now it's mostly being in the present moment, and then an idea will float by that I need to do something about, make a phone call, there's a problem I need to solve, and I will go solve that problem, and it might require some thinking about the past. Oh, when is that payment due? When's the next one? How much was it? What web page do I go to? What was my password? So you have these moments where you go through this number of processes that require you to leave, if you will, perception and go into data recall and be in that dimness. There's no but the difference is that once you're aware of the dimness, then you're able to anytime a pain arises from something, it immediately reminds you, oh, I'm in pain, I'm upset, and you immediately can take responsibility. You go back into the present moment. You would sense that your mind is processing something and making you feel negative or angry or irritated or fearful or any of those more animalistic natures that the mind tries to impose upon you in order to get you to do something that it thinks is necessary or solve some emergency, and realize that you actually can do those things that need to be done. Make that phone call, have that conversation, and you can remain centered. You can remain aware that you are this magnificent being that can experience joy in the middle of an argument, or and not be an anger that promotes anger in that argument, but be a comfortable, loving soul that observes the pain that other person's in and diffuses that argument. And surprisingly, there's almost no situation where your centeredness and awareness of who you really are is not going to make a better result. The most extreme example of that is in the martial arts. If you've ever had the opportunity to study the martial arts and under a wise master, you may see, when they're teaching, you may see a high level of concentration on their face, sometimes a smile, but there's no reason to be angry in the middle of a fight. Anger debilitates you if you're the angry person. And that's what trash talk is. It's trying to get your opponent out of their game. I'm not recommending trash talk. I'm just pointing out that if you're the one who's centered and aware of all the information and taking it all in, that's a better place, even in the most extreme situations. Even under the most extreme conditions, you're going to be better taken care of, not just yourself, but others around you, if you are centered, if you remain aware of your environment while you run that program that knows how to solve that problem and augment it with more information, the acceptance of everything going on around you, and no denial about the present moment. And so living becomes alive. Instead of these periods of times where you disappear and go into your mind and you're in pain, living becomes every moment of your life. Your life becomes as long as you live instead of whenever you let yourself live. And there are people that are completely in their mind. They are not living at all in the enlightenment sense. They have a car, they have a house, they have a job, possibly, but and some are quite successful. Some of the most unhinged people who are completely self-identified with their mind. Some of those can be quite successful. Awareness and success are not necessarily in a Venn diagram. They're not necessarily an intersection. They can be and are. They're very enlightened people who are successful. But those two are not necessarily related. Success doesn't require compassion or awareness. Which brings me to my point, which is what got me going down this path, and that is that in order to be a part of an atrocity, genocide, any sort of atrocity, political, humanitarian, it's very difficult to do that if you're present, or if the perpetrator has present people around them. And one of the first things you'll notice that in any kind of propaganda leading up to war is that the political machine will kick in and begin to tell you, oh, they're not humans. Oh, they're conservatives, or they're liberals, or they're whatever. Well, you pick it. They're black, they're white, they're Chinese, they're Russian. And so the political mechanism turns people into objects, and then assigns feelings to those objects. And what is this? It's how the mind categorizes information and how it recalls it and feels it. And so if you can objectify other human beings, attach information to them, they're lazy, they're communist, they're this, they're all these, you give them all these labels, then at some point you'll be able to tell society, we need to go kill them. We need to imprison them. We need to objectify them. And so really present moment awareness, and the awareness of categorizing people without really even knowing any of them to know if they are like that. I can tell you that in my life I've listened to propaganda about religious groups, national groups, genetic predisposition groups, sexual preference or orientation. I mean, I've heard just about everything objectified in my years on the planet, but I've never found the information to be accurate when I actually knew someone in that group and got to know them. I'm not saying that that given any group, you're not going to have a few characters running around that are, undesirable in some general sense, but it's not, in my experience, something that will attach to the whole group. And so that's nonsense. You begin to hear this sort of objectification of other human beings. You know that someone's either creating, they're either the creator of this misinformation, or they're a parrot that are repeating it. They learn it from their parents or whatever. And so I'm not saying to judge those people. I don't think that does good either. It doesn't good to objectify the objectifiers. I think it does good to feel compassion for both, and to get to know them and try to put the two together. I think if they know people from that group, that helps dissolve that nonsense. But that brings me to my final point, which is really, I wanted to start with humans because it's real clear and easy to see that. And I wanted to talk about the planet more, and animals and trees. If you can be one with trees and flowers and the planet and streams and animals, then it's really kind of hard to objectify them and treat them poorly. And so that's what my point is. I mean, we're at a point now in the world where our resources are taxed, and people need to wake up that and realize that everything, including the earth itself, is alive. The trees, the animals, and they're not objects for our pleasure that have an unlimited shelf life and are going to grow back, and we can treat them however we want. So if you begin to become awake and think about not just humans, but the entire planet itself, our ecosystem, and begin to read and just be aware of the fact that we, as a species, are a bit of a scourge right now on the rest of the other beings on this planet, and we're totally objectifying them and treating them like they have no value, they have no inherent meaning, like they're not formed of the same source energy that we are. They haven't evolved over the centuries like we have. They're made in God's image. If you believe in God, they're God's plants and God's animals, and they deserve that respect. And as is the air that we breathe and the water we drink. And there's a huge catechism, or this huge ravine forming between, political groups in various countries, and it's silly. There's scientific proof that a lot of these threats are real, and there's denial about it in order to preserve man's dominance in the universe, which is the same kind of dominance that war is about, right? I mean, you pick a group, you objectify them, and you dominate them, kill them all if you have to, enslave them, rape, pillage. They're not human beings, they're not God's creatures, do whatever you like to them. It's kind of the same denial we have about the planet and its resources and animals and trees, and it's a lot of it's just political, that our politics around the world are run by entities that are being contributed to by, or put up by, entities that have a financial interest in status quo and are not really of the people anymore. And so, not just be aware of your own use of resources and whether or not you're objectifying in your own experience of other beings on the planet, but also look around you for who politically is being responsible for more than just whoever's contributing to them, and support those people. So anyway, that was my point. It was just that once you become aware of within yourself about more than just what your mind is crunching at the moment. But once you open your eyes and let in the environment and let in the experience of being alive in the present moment, that begins to open up this whole other side of yourself, which is an awareness of how to be a responsible shepherd of all of the lovely resources that are here in this lovely place at this time, and to think about how do we preserve that for future generations, and how do we not just crawl over the entire planet and just build more and more of everything to the point where there's no more forests, no more natural lands to walk in or to enjoy, or do we responsibly manage that in a way where we're not growing so fast unconsciously that eventually some disease just enforces the Earth's will upon us because we've become a huge source of meat based on overpopulation. So anyway, that was my thoughts for today. Thanks for listening.